This is going to be, I'm calling to order the last meeting of this particular school committee's incarnation, the 2014-15 school committee as currently constituted. Next time we will have a new school committee member, regardless of the outcome of the vote on May 5th. So the first thing we're going to start with is the calendar. We're starting a couple minutes late because we had a wonderful going away ceremony for Abby, who has just given us so much in terms of bringing a parent voice into the school committee and into all of our deliberations, leading the policy committee, and so many other important roles. So thank you for that, and we're expecting to stay in touch, regardless of whether or not you block our phone number in the future. So the calendar, any additions to the calendar? I think the only new thing from last week is the graduations, the slate of graduations, which we will send around and we'll all sign up for. Any other events that people particularly want to point out?
Isn't that the athletic awards? Do we still do that?
Yes, we do, and I don't think we have a date yet.
Ms. Cox pointed out the May 5th town election, which is an exciting day, but also you can vote early if you are not going to be here. You don't even need to do absentee. You just show up and vote early at town hall, and their hours are on the website. Anything else?
Madam Chair, I must, on behalf of Pat Ward, who has been very, very clear about this, say that Brookline does not have early voting, but you may vote absentee up until noon on May 4th.
Thank you.
And it's open on Saturday till 12? Till 2. 9 to 2.
9 to 2 on Saturday. Absentee voting, which can occur before May 5th. Is that okay? Okay. Anything else?
Celebrating teachers?
Go ahead. Sure.
Down towards the bottom of the calendar on May 13th, you can see Celebrating Teachers at Newbury College, which is always a wonderful event. I encourage everybody to be there.
All right. Then we will move on to the consent agenda. There are two items, the past record of our April 9th school committee meeting and an out-of-state trip to New York City for the Baker 8th grade. Do I have a motion? Dr. Jackson, have a second?
Second.
Mr. Chang, all those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you. So we will move on to subcommittee reports. First, we'll start with finance. Mr. Chang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Finance did not meet since the last school committee meeting, but we will have the finance subcommittee meeting on this coming Monday, the 4th, at 8:30. So please do come.
Okay. Capital improvements.
The capital subcommittee, I haven't prepared a report. I think we have some really interesting things have been happening with the devotion school project and the building committee. Maybe we can get a report from Ms. Cox, and then I can fill us in on the meeting that happened pretty much all day yesterday on the selection of the interviewing of construction management firms for the project.
A very brief devotion report. The Devotion Building Committee met on April 16th and reviewed one more time the schematic design that we then voted and was submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority that same day. And I don't believe we've scheduled a next meeting. I think we're still waiting to see when the best timing for that is.
So yesterday was scheduled interviews with construction management firms that had first applied for a pre-qualification process. 4 firms had been pre-qualified, and then all of the firms were pre-qualified that had showed an interest. And then a request for proposals was published by the town, and all 4 firms responded. And the interviews were scheduled for yesterday. But as I think a measure of the construction market today. Actually, in the week leading up to the interviews, 2 of the 4 firms withdrew their proposals because they had essentially filled up their schedules for the team that they had put together for our project. For a project of the scale of a $90 million construction, it really has a whole highly experienced team of people that are devoted full-time for several years of their work. And, of course, there were 4 firms competing, so they were looking for other work as well. So 2 of the teams that had been put forward actually found a parking place and employment. Nonetheless, the other 2 firms, Suffolk and Gilbane, are excellent firms, and each made a presentation. The committee spent probably 2 hours with each yesterday, and then essentially both were found. One was found to be highly highly advantageous, and the other advantageous really on the basis of the information in the interviews, on previous experience of members of the committee working with the firm, and on really some innovative thinking that they had brought to their approach to the project, which I think will be of interest to everybody. None of it's been tested, but they had spent considerable amount of time looking at the possibility of essentially a modular village on the basketball courts, if you will, locating a 24-month leased temporary modular construction, hooking it up to all of the utilities, which actually are right there in Stedman Street, and thereby, even though we may not be able to find another school that we could rent to put the K to 4th graders in, relocate them on site all the way at the far end, and be able to accelerate the construction that way. So it's now up to, as it always is, up to the building department to do due diligence, to negotiate, and but one of the things that if we can come to some kind of an agreement with the construction manager, their first order of business would be to start looking into the feasibility of that, so that if in fact we were able to be certain that we could do a single-phased project, that information could get to the designers as quickly as possible, who are now in something of a lull until the 3 big events that will lead to moving forward on the Devotion project, the override question 2, and the subsequent vote to fund the project at town meeting, assuming the override goes through, and then the vote on June 3rd of the Mass School Building Authority on the funding agreement with the town. And if all those 3 things go as planned, then following June 3rd, both the construction management firm and our design team will jump ahead and move the project forward towards construction next year.
All right. And everything else is on track, all the other various projects that we have going on at the other schools?
Yeah, the snow melted.
Mr.
And,
Rowe, Mr. Rowe is nodding, so we'll.
yes. So,
He's nodding as a yes. Okay.
so, and that's the Upper Devo on Route 9 for the 5th to 8th graders, and the 7th and 8th graders next year is on schedule, and planning for occupancy with Ms. Crowley, and they're making plans for getting furniture and having the school ready to go. And do you want to say anything?
I was just going to say, the principal, Monica Crowley, is making plans with the building department to be able to move in early summer, and then with the furniture coming in midsummer, so we'll be all set with
Great.
that
And
building. And the construction at Lawrence School, the additional classrooms, are on schedule and also will be set up and ready to go.
so unlike some of
And the third leg is we're just beginning for the modular installation at Baker School, which we also expect to have in place.
and while we're at it, is
That'll
there
be closer, but
update on the Pierce rental
And the Pierce rental, in fact, we're meeting tomorrow with town council, the owner's rep. We're finalizing the contract, but they've actually begun the build-out before we've actually finalized all of our agreement because they're making improvements in the space.
So why don't you back up a little and just fill out in the committee with what's happening up on the top floor across the...
Right, the top floor of
The windows.
62 Harvard, which has an entrance adjacent to the main entrance of the Pierce School and the Pierce Historic Building. There'll be access for 7th and 8th graders primarily. I think it's actually going to be exclusively 7th graders. We're working with Piper Smith Mumford, the principal, as she finalizes the plan. But there'll be 3 classrooms up on the 3rd floor, along with some support offices, bathrooms, other support space that she's going to be using for her middle school age students. I believe she's actually targeting 7th grade for next year. And as we move forward over the next couple of years, there would be the possibility of us getting additional space in that building. So we're, given its adjacency to Pierce School, it's really a value.
Before you go, so the modulars at Baker, those are scheduled, have they begun?
Yes, Vanguard is the name of the company. They have been out beginning to scope out, doing some work on the site. I don't know that whether they've actually begun to dig for the supports, but they're scheduled to do that momentarily.
So does that mean that our pre-Ks over at Heath will be staying there then?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
That's
This will
fantastic.
give-
I think it'll be
this will
important
give-
for parents to know that and
This will give Baker
staff.
School the space they need for the 2 additions that would happen next year. All of the things being equal, no consolidations.
Mhm.
So that's what we anticipate. The schedule on this one's going to be tight.
Mhm.
And so Ray Masick from the building department is working diligently with the contractor. And Mary Brown also is aware of this, so we're working with her on logistics and plans Bs and those kinds of things. In case the schedule were to slip, we'll see how this goes.
We can
Great.
get off the Capitol rails soon because we could actually get into this all night. But one more thing that I just wanted to recount is that Peter led us on a merry tour. It was a joint Capitol subcommittee of this committee and of the advisory committee had a tour of overcrowding with also. We were very well led by the principals, Piper Smith Mumford, in our tour of Pierce, followed by Mary Brown in our tour of Baker, and it really did. For me, it was a very useful tour. I think for others on the tour as well, and showed that while both schools are able to operate very successfully, it is with a lot of really significant crowding and on the margins compromised workspaces, primarily compromised workspaces for teachers and staff. For teachers not having desks in classrooms but all sharing a closet for their desks, and they've got little portable partitions in the auditorium, and that's the 2nd grade music room, and the music teacher has a desk on the far end of the building, and on and on and on with these kinds of compromised, suboptimal conditions, which are allowing the school to click along and do what it needs to do, kind of quite successfully and adequately, but with difficulty.
Yeah, I want to go back to this issue if I can for a second. So the issue of Baker, and I was going to actually say this in my report, but it seems to fit better here. We've started to do some buffer zone assignments, in particular related to kindergartens. We're trying to, and we've not done all those assignments. Our goal is all of them done by May 15th. But we have two areas of difficulty that, if you haven't heard about already, you probably will. There is the area associated with the Heath-Baker buffer and the Lawrence Devotion buffer. and the issues are related to enrollments at Heath and at Lawrence that are large. They are pushing the number of sections that we've assumed, because that's what we have room for at those two schools, are being pushed up against by the numbers that we have at those schools already. If you count in the buffer zone assignments, and so therefore, we've indicated to a significant number of parents who made one request, that is Heath or Lawrence, that right now their tentative assignment is the other school, but that we will continue to monitor that, and if numbers allow, we would of course, right, allow them to go to that school, to the school that they requested. This is, as you remember, this is to allow every child who's been registered by a particular date to attend a kindergarten orientation. That's a primary goal of ours. But it is going to entail, and so it comes up for me in response to your question, because we're assuming a certain number of sections at Heath. We could assume another section that I don't think would be a good long-term practice in terms of the school being a 3-section school. It would be a 4th class, and it would entail us moving that early education class this year rather than next year, which we're not going to. Well, we'd have to locate it in one of these other locations. It'd been the same to where as if we needed it for Baker. We'd have to find a slot, and it may be part of one of the other things that Mr. Rowe mentioned for a year or so. So we have these couple of difficult areas already associated with these two buffer zones, which we've heard a lot of feedback on, and I'm sure some of you have already and will continue to. We are going to try to accommodate as many families as we can. It's going to take us some time into the summer to be able to figure out how many we actually can accommodate.
All right. I will just note that there is not a public update on, I don't think there's a public update on the devotion K through 4 situation, but it is, I think the public should know that it is an active piece of the conversation. Some of it's happening in either executive session or in non-public places because of the nature of real estate negotiations and that sort of thing, but it is something that is actively being pursued on a variety of different ways. So it's happening. I don't want people to think it's not happening, but we are not doing a public report on it. Okay, curriculum.
So I actually have nothing to report because unfortunately we had to cancel the last 2 meetings, one being today. It was supposed to be before our meeting for school improvement reports, and also yesterday's meeting that there were all sorts of, it's a hard time right now. Anyway, but we will be meeting. Fortunately, we have a meeting scheduled for the 20th of May, and that we will be doing, and there will be some school improvement reports, and right now I can't remember the rest of the agenda, but there is a rest of the agenda. So, that's it.
Government relations, Ms. Stone. Oh, sorry, of course.
No, what we've done actually is managed to put it all into, we might need to ask for an extra half hour on the last one in June, but I think other than that, and if people could sort of set that aside, so it would be 8:30 to 10:30 instead of 8:30 to 10. But that, Dr. Fisher-Mueller and I sort of mapped out the next 2 meetings, and it seems like we can manage to get everything we need to get into that time framework, and at the last meeting have some time to discuss a little bit of next year and what the committee would like to do. Assuming we're all in the same committee. Oh, well,
Okay.
one person won't be on the committee.
All right, Ms. Stone, government relations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is an election on Tuesday in Brookline, which I hope everybody will participate in, and I hope everybody listening will participate in enthusiastically. And I have nothing else to report.
Well, actually, the House budget came out. Great, then I won't.
Okay. For her swan song, Ms. Cox, policy review update. The entire policy manual is done and is printed, right?
I
At the
wish.
printer?
No, sadly, I have nothing to report. We have not met since the last meeting. But the next meeting will be on May 13th, and I'm sure it will be in capable hands because I had an unparalleled policy subcommittee, and any one of them will do a beautiful job of leading this. But I will be thinking of you from afar on May 13th, and will be happy to deliver into anyone's hands the materials that will be necessary. I know for sure the agenda should include our continuing work on revising, minor revision of J1A, which is student admissions, and our continuing work on student attendance.
I love how J1A just rolls off the tongue. All right, good. Yes, we could, but we won't. Additional liaisons and updates. Dr. Jackson.
So, Dr. Lupini, are you going to do the House?
I am. I have a budget update actually.
Great, then I'll skip that. But you should know, I'm reading my legislative bulletin, so stand on top of it.
Thank God someone's reading.
Occasionally. So the other update I have is from CPAC. We met on the 17th, and two primary topics. One was a report out from one of the school liaisons about a conference held by the Federation for Children with Special Needs, focused on communities, particularly multilingual communities. And there was a lot of discussion both just about the value of the conference, but also brought up the issue of transitions, and had a great conversation about just making people aware of the person the district has who is focused on transitions, particularly for youth who are finishing school. The other topic that we spent time on is the fact that IEPs, individualized education plans, are moving online. And there is a process whereby parents, teachers, and others can take a look at what's being piloted this year in the fall, starting in the fall, with a goal to adopt the final tool in 2016. And the idea behind moving it online, one is to standardize the format, make it more parent-friendly, and to have it be easy across the state. So if students are moving around, everybody has access who needs it. But of course, issues like confidentiality and privacy are being worked out as they do this. But so folks were encouraged to participate and go online to try it out and give feedback to the extent that it applies to them or they're interested. That's it for CPAC.
That is a pretty significant, I mean, we have not spent a whole lot of time on this yet, but that is a significant issue. There are two districts I know in the last 4 months that have had an incident involving IEPs and online. So anyhow, that's something for us to spend a little bit of time on, I think.
Shalowski?
I have three things, actually, to report. It's been a busy time, very busy the last couple of days. So this morning I went to an EDCO meeting where we were presented with a tentative budget for fiscal year 16 with some cuts in staff in order to balance that budget and some increases in fees. So our fee for EDCO next year will go up by $4,400 it's a huge, well, okay, so let me go back 2 steps. Wellesley in December asked to withdraw, and in the end there was an agreement made that Wellesley could withdraw as long as they signed the Articles of Agreement, because in order to get the Articles of Agreement finished, because we voted them over a year ago, and it's taken a long time for all the school committees to get together and vote them. So, and you have to have unanimous agreement. So the idea was, since Wellesley's plan to leave hadn't finished, but yet we knew they were going, and they wouldn't pay their fees, their assessment for this year, but they would agree to sign the Articles of Agreement. There would be new Articles of Agreement done next year once that process happened. Along with that, they talked about moving up the date, because the date right now is December, that you need to inform the collaborative, if you plan to leave it, to move it up to September or possibly even July. So that was another piece there. So by Wellesley withdrawing, their assessment is gone, and so that needs to be picked up by the other districts or by EDCO. So we're still in negotiations about how it's $27,000, and well, it would have been
Our assessment?
no, ours is 35. For next year, actually, I can tell you the exact amount because I happen to have it right here, but I'll give it to. Here it is. Next year would be 35,754. We're the second highest, and Newton is the highest. It's all driven by a number of students, which I wanted to make sure is the correct number, too. That was another piece, but that we can do offline.
Isabel, are you done
Let me
with
just
Bill?
let me just finish what I was going to. Okay, go ahead.
So we've talked over the course of this year about EDCO and our participation, and I just need to be reminded, because I don't remember where we left it in terms of when we were going to revisit our own participation. This suggests that we should be doing that
So,
relatively soon.
We're going to revisit it administratively after May 5th, probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. My hope is that, I mean, we'll discuss that with Ms. Terlepsky in particular, and I would guess have a recommendation for you. I doubt if we'll make May 21st, but probably the June meeting.
I think that would be a great idea to have the conversation, to understand what it is we receive from, or what we could receive, and what we feel.
I think we absolutely have to have that conversation, especially given the move and what we've been talking about, and given the size of the increase.
I mean, I will say preliminarily, the discussion of the senior staff discussion has confirmed, I think, for me, that we were right about the impact that the move would have, number one, on professional learning opportunities and our teachers' participation. We've heard a lot from EDCO about them trying to do some distance learning opportunities and moving things around. We've not seen any of that. To be fair, it's been a year, but we've not seen any of that. Secondly, that the increased focus on special education programming, which I applaud, has not benefited us to date. So the evidence is not good that this move and this shift in focus has benefited this district.
And I think they're very much aware of it. We've talked about it at the meetings, the distance it is for blind teachers to get there, for me, Dr. Lupini to get there. Anyway, you haven't gone lately. But
I think perhaps can be underscored is that regardless of whether the May 5th override is successful, we are clearly.
this is a discussion that needs to happen.
Yes. I mean, this is a discussion that has to happen about the quality of our kids and the quality of the experience that our teachers are having and our administration. And so we are watching every dollar, and we may be watching these and making decisions one way or the other, but it's going to be on a lens of value for money.
Right. None of our discussion has been about the fees.
Right.
Our discussion has been totally about programming and special education programming and professional learning opportunities. We obviously have to weigh that against this, but it has nothing to do with next Tuesday.
That's fine. It's just you'd said we're going to wait until after the May 5th vote.
No,
and so I
yeah,
just want
right,
people
sure.
to understand that that's just based on
No, and-
overall
Based on our
workload.
list.
It is the
And
amount of time
the
we
other
have and
piece
bandwidth
of this
right
is-
now. Not dependent on the override.
No.
The piece of this, too, is that if we had 5 students in one of the programs, we would have the member, discounted rate, and it would pay for the cost of what we paid to be a member. But we don't.
So, is this on EDCO?
My question is, and this is partly the answer, how many
we're going to do this
So-
on
We'll do
May.
that.
Let us do that.
I think that's the point.
Let us,
That's
let us
exactly
gather
what we
those
wanna-
data
Yeah.
and bring you a recommendation in the first meeting in June after discussing it with Ms. Charlevsky.
Because we also have EDCO classrooms in our.
But yeah, the whole
The
relationship.
whole,
We-
the whole
we-
relationship.
We do, and that's all part of the consideration. In fact, some of that's already been discussed because of the growth of our high school, yes.
And the other piece, little piece, well, it could be a big piece to add. EDCO is presently in discussions with the CASE Collaborative and the Lab Collaborative to, well, we can't talk about merging because apparently the lawyer says that's not feasible to merge, but it could be working together, collaborating, or one of them dissolving and becoming part of EDCO. Many of the CASE, and there's a huge amount of crossover between CASE, Lab, and the EDCO board, the districts that belong to those collaboratives. And there's just maybe 4 communities that don't belong to EDCO that belong to CASE and Lab. Okay?
Good. Mr. Chang?
But I wasn't done.
Oh.
That's okay. I can go and then we can come back. It's okay. No. You sure?
Someone go, please.
Okay. So I have 2 more. This morning I was at the Bright Symposium over at the high school. They do this every year with the communities that have a Bright program. Presently there are 30 communities across the state, or 14% of high schools, which have a program that emulates what we did, and through our dissemination have started. There's another 10, I think, 5 to 10 that will be starting this year. I think it's something to be really proud of, our collaboration with the Brookline Mental Health Center and how that has worked to benefit students, benefit our district, and save money. I mean, and no, even more importantly, it's the right thing to do for kids. Saving money is a good secondary gain, but the right thing to do for kids is really important. They are doing a 3-year research project to validate and make this an evidence-based program. It's in the 3rd year now, so we should be getting some statistics back for it. And that was, and one interesting fact that I heard that Huck White, the doctor who's in charge, Dr. White, who's in charge of the Brookline Mental Health Center and the founder of this program, said that 92% of the students go back into their the regular programs after a period. Some come back and then go back again. There's that too. These are kids who have significant issues, and so you wouldn't be surprised that there'd be some regression. But I thought that was pretty amazing. So that was the second thing. Can I do my third? Okay. So I, along with a number of other people, went to the STEPS gala yesterday at Dexter School. No, oh, you do it. No, I've talked enough.
Which was funny because his microphone wasn't on. Mr. Glover! Mr. Glover! No, we really need to keep going. Would you like to say a couple words since she's now, we all looked at you and giggled?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, SEPS had its annual event / fundraiser last night at a new location out at Dexter Southfield School, and a number of you were there. It was a great event, as always for me, and I suspect for others as well. Hearing about all of the great accomplishments of the students is really one of the highlights. And I'll allow Ms. Charlevsky to add on to anything I didn't include.
There's just 2 things I'd like to add,
Sure.
if I could. One, that they actually had more people there than they even expected. That was part of the reason that the food was a little low, because they'd given one number and more people showed up, which is a good thing. That's a good thing. And you could see it. There was really a great crowd there last night, much bigger than I've seen in past years. And 2, that Dexter School actually was very generous in what they charged, and and that the head of the board actually gave a scholarship to one of the students to attend Dexter School next year for the Dexter School Summer Program. Not
I was
Dexter
gonna say, are
School.
they-
Not Dexter School.
Are they
No.
helping our
Just
enrollment problem?
and it's nice that they have begun to become much more friendly to the public schools, and I actually thanked him for that, and that I hope to continue. The third thing that he mentioned was that the what's it called now? Where we had it at the Clay Center, the observatory. Thank you for helping me with my word finding problem there. Good pickup. Is open on Tuesday nights and free to the Brookline community. So I didn't know that, and I'm not sure if other people know it, so I asked him to send me the schedule, and I will share it.
This Tuesday night is probably not a good night.
No, we don't want
I was surprised that only one.
I'm not sure if it's every Tuesday night, and I'm sorry to.
I was surprised that only one person joked about taking it by eminent domain because of this beautiful views, and apparently they have classrooms there. So.
Oh yes, they have a lot of classes.
Madam Chair, I wasn't aware that you were joking.
Only one person. It wasn't me. Before you start tweeting it, it was not my. I'd love to take credit for the line. It wasn't my line. It was asked to me. I will say that we were also so delighted that they honored the Cawthorn family and John Cawthorn and Alan and Cecily Morse, who are such all of whom are so important to the schools community.
It was also, if I could just say, so in the midst of an override campaign, which has taken up all of our time and taken us away in some ways, even though we keep on repeating what this is for and how important it is for the kids, to be in that community and to listen to the kids themselves made, for me, just it all made it much more real. And it sort of made me want to stand up and cheer and say, just bring everybody there and say, this is what we're fighting for. This is what we're talking about. It's a really wonderful program, and I was just so impressed with the kids, with the staff, and as I said, we all need a chance to feel like there's something to stand up and cheer for, and that's definitely part of the system that we should cheer for.
Only 4 of us have updated folks on the steps event. If anybody else wants. Mr. Chang.
Well, I don't know how I'm going to follow up with this. Something quite mundane. This Monday, I went to the Climate Action Committee meeting, but there were a public meeting for 5 proposed warrant articles that's coming before the town. The first one is regarding drinking water access, general bylaws, where they're asking for holders of the common victicular licenses to offer town tap water to customers. That's the first one. The second one is also about bottled water, prohibiting the sale of bottled water on town property, and the purchase of bottled water with town funds is the second one. The third one, which is modifying zoning map to extend renewable energy overlay district to include town-owned parcels at Newton Street, where the solid waste, hazardous waste drop-off is. Actually, what's quite interesting about this one is that the solar voltaic that's potentially being installed would generate over 1 million megawatt of power, which would be one of the largest in eastern part of Massachusetts if we get that. So that's quite interesting, I thought. So to do that, there's going to be a financing for the for this station for a period of 30 years to obviously fund that construction. And lastly, resolution requesting the Board of Selectmen to study and consider using eminent domain, that word, to acquire 2 green space buffer zones along Beverly and Rusted Roads. So those are the 5 warrant articles.
Anything else for the longest subcommittee reports in history? I'll just say one other thing then, which is that
Pile on.
we've had a phenomenal set of meetings with the advisory committee over the last number of days. We did Bill and Peter did a presentation. Jennifer did a presentation to them a couple weeks ago about the technology plan, which you all remember, about the overall budget issues, and there were many other questions that were embedded in there, which is on the website if anybody missed it. And then last week, this week, this week,
Tuesday night.
48 hours ago, last week, 48 hours, same thing. We went back and they voted the school's budget, and the good news is that they passed the budget, which is both the override and the non-override budget, and also they discussed and moved forward the CIP items, with the exception of devotion. I think they tabled that devotion. Anyway, so in addition to and then there was a school subcommittee meeting in the middle of that, and then there was the joint capital meeting. So I think we've had 4 meetings with different configurations of the advisory committee in the last few weeks, and all of them have been very productive. Okay. Moving on to public comment. No, you don't even have to get up, Robin. No one's here. Seeing no public comment, is there anyone who is a member of the public who wishes to make public comment? Seeing none, superintendent's report, and we are back 7 minutes behind schedule.
Thank you. You have a copy of a written report in your materials. It's very brief. One major item which was communicated to the public this week was regarding leadership at Driscoll School. You all know by now that Principal Heidi Cook has informed us that she and her husband are expecting twins in October. And we are thrilled for Heidi and for her husband and for her family. We've worked closely over the last few weeks. Dr. Allen's done a lot of great work on this to develop a plan for Driscoll School during her absence for the majority of the coming school year. We focused mainly on someone who's worked in a system like Brookline, who has a reputation for ensuring a culture of student achievement, educational equity, and collaboration, and who has experience with continuous improvement efforts even during an interim year. What I said to staff on Tuesday morning when I met with them is there are people, John Ritchie, Joe Conley, Steve Silvestri among them, who know how to be interims, who know how to keep an improvement plan moving forward, who know how to set up conditions for either someone to return or someone to come into the experience. And I think what we've learned is that there are some people who are really good interims and people who struggle more in that role. And one of the people who we know, who's identified by some of our contacts, Joe Conley among them, who's done an excellent job in this work, is Dr. Eileen Driscoll Woods, who has agreed to come to the Driscoll School for the coming year. She is currently serving as the interim principal at the Walton School in Wakefield and previously served for 2 years as interim principal at the Dallin School in Arlington. Prior to her retirement, she was in the Andover Public Schools for 22 years as a principal from 1985 to 1991, spent a year as assistant superintendent, and then most recently, prior to her retirement, was principal of their South Elementary School from 1998 to 2008. She was Massachusetts Principal of the Year in 1998. Colleagues comment on her passion for the work, her collaborative nature, and her efforts as a mentor for teachers and school leaders. And I can tell you that's been our experience already as we've prepared for this experience. We're currently working to schedule times, first of all, for her to be here to meet all of you, and more importantly, for her to be at the school to meet with staff and students, and then to meet with parents in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We're trying to set that up. And we're thrilled that Eileen will be at the school. Right now, it looks like Eileen will actually start in mid-August. We know what Heidi's anticipated date is to leave us, and we're not taking that date to the bank. So we're trying to start so that we're guaranteed to have some overlap before Heidi goes out. I will also say that Dr. Woods is assisting us. You remember from my last report that we've elevated our vice principal at the Heath School to be the interim for the year. Therefore need an interim vice principal. And we are actively pursuing a number of people, retired principals, to fill that role. And Eileen has agreed to help us in that work, and has already given us a number of great candidates for us to speak with, and more importantly for me, for Annie Savalius to speak with.
So, can I ask one question?
Sure.
How did you find somebody with the last name Driscoll to be the
It was a
principal?
criteria. It was actually in the
I thought
rubric
so.
that we set out to do.
I was amazed when I saw that.
Second item on the report, thank you for that. Second item on the report, we have developed a plan, the high school actually developed, and Mr. Rowe, Dr. Allen are currently vetting a plan that they submitted for the elimination of 5.0 FTE positions at Brookline High School. Deb Holman, the headmaster, has presented the plan. Given the importance of the plan and the fact that it is not as simple as an elementary plan, it involves a lot of 0.2 FTEs, a lot of individual sections, those kinds of things. It's being reviewed and tested by Mr. Rowe and Dr. Allen. We will have the plan finalized on Tuesday, so that if we need to implement that plan, we can begin to do that on Wednesday and can communicate it to parents as we start to implement. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. At Leslie College, there is a TSTT, Today's Students, Tomorrow's Teachers, recognition ceremony that will take place. Some of you may know that Today's Students, Tomorrow's Teachers is a very important program to us. We were one of the first districts in the Commonwealth to bring this program to Massachusetts. It's a program designed to encourage students of color beginning in 9th grade to explore and pursue teaching as a profession. We now have, I believe it's 3 cohorts of students involved. And tomorrow is a recognition ceremony to honor their work, honor the work of the adults who work with them. Malcolm Cawthorn was mentioned earlier. Malcolm is the key individual at the high school in working with these students and making this program work. I thought you should know those students will be recognized tomorrow morning during that program, and I will be there for that ceremony. I think that, I have one other thing. I think there are 15 or 3 cohorts of 5, I believe, of students now. A cohort of 5 students in each of 3 grades.
No, but how many will be graduating?
Of ours, I don't know. I don't know if we have the first cohort. I always forget whether they're graduating this year or next year, but it's one of the 2 years, right? I want to share with you one other piece. So I want to clarify with some comments here. Comments made to the Brookline tab by Deputy Superintendent Peter Rowe in response to questions about the cost of METCO students in our school system. We appreciate the work of the Override Study Committee in designing a model that will assist and has assisted town and school officials in calculating the cost of both resident and non-resident students in our schools. In fact, Mr. Rowe was commenting specifically only on the possible savings associated with removing all METCO students from the system at one time in the comments that he made, which is not the position of the No Override campaign, and in fact during the Override committee discussions was never, I don't believe was ever raised as a possibility. We regret any interpretation of Peter's comments that would indicate that we do not agree with the per student cost model created through the OSC process. In fact, as I said earlier, we find that model to be valuable in some of the work that we've done since in looking at per student costs. Thanks.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Oh, Ms. Cox.
And I don't know, Dr. Lupini, if you know the answer to this, it might be something that Ms. Holman will or become more of on Tuesday. I'm wondering if the high school scheduling, I know the students have put in their schedule requests, and how that gets affected by what could possibly be a change in staffing.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It is, and what I can tell you globally is that it's impacted in the ways that we described during the budgeting process or during our budget presentations. We knew that 5.0 FTE would have impact on a number of things. It could have impact on numbers of sections of certain courses offered, of certain electives, and of certain supports. I think if I had to, if I'm trying to remember the analysis, brief analysis that I did looking at, more impacts those first two areas than the latter area right now. That is, we have some reductions in areas that are elective areas, and therefore would reduce either certain electives or the numbers of sections offered in those areas. So, right, your question's a really important one because it's really around the intersection of students now having their schedules done. People want us to be able to put schedules in students' hands. We want to be able to do that. And the sooner we know what our staffing is in each department, the better we can meet that desire for students to see what kinds of classes they can have on their schedule, what kinds of modifications need to be made to schedules. And so that kicks in earnest, quite frankly, when we know what our staffing will be beginning on Wednesday.
I also just remembered it. So while the rest of us have been distracted with some other things going on this last month, it has also been an extraordinarily important month and a half for our seniors. And I wondered if, I think at this point, most of the seniors have had to make their, or are about to make their choices about what they're doing next year.
You better hurry.
Yeah. And so I was just going to ask, I mean, I've been hearing only through friends and in the community some various stories, but I was wondering if we were going to get a report on our matriculation rates and where they're going.
So the presentation we have scheduled, I forget, is next week. Is on competency determination. That's a good question. I'll make sure that I pose that to the headmaster and the assistant headmaster, and they can address that then. They'll be here next week with us.
Terrific. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on. Presentation and discussion of current issues. The FY16 budget update.
Oh, so okay. So this isn't, and some other people have information. I'll update you on what we know. What we know is that there are three major areas where we've seen changes from House 1, and they're all good news. Let me say before I even talk about that, the House has approved a budget, so we are at that stage. They took up the budget recommended by the House Ways and Means Committee, and they now have a budget. This is fast-tracked this year because of the delay associated with a new governor and how much additional time he had to present a budget. And so we do expect to see a Senate Ways and Means budget in the next few weeks. Right, by the end of May, we're hoping we have a Senate budget, and they've begun their reconciliation process. The three areas are Medco, where we've seen an increase of, I believe it's 1.3 million over the governor's proposal. In the total, yes. Remember, the governor's proposal was essentially restoring Medco to pre-9C cut levels. So this is a $1.3 million increase over that number in total. I will say here, historically, this is very good news because historically we've seen restoration. We haven't seen this kind of restorations in the House, so that's good news. Second, the House has rejected the governor's call for a consolidation of a number of the targeted grant areas, including kindergarten expansion. And so kindergarten expansion is in the House budget, and I believe it's back in at the number from last year, I believe. I believe it's the same number. But the good news is they've rejected that move in total and restored, I think, most, if not all, of these areas. So kindergarten expansion restored in the House budget. Again, we'll see what the Senate does with that.
Is that, I'm sorry, when you say level funded, is that straight dollars or is that adjusted dollars?
Pardon?
Do they adjust the dollars when they level fund?
No,
or
level
is
funded.
the same number?
Yeah, level funded means level funded.
Okay. So it's,
was a cut.
yes,
Yes.
thank you.
And the third area, and I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers on this, is an increase to circuit breaker. The governor proposed, I believe it was an increase to circuit breaker, and this is a further increase to circuit breaker in the House. Circuit breaker, historically, this tends to happen with circuit breaker. The House and Senate love circuit breaker because it's a way to drive money directly to local school districts. So I would anticipate we're going to see at least this House funding level when we get to final numbers. So three pieces that I know of good news. There may be others that we missed.
Yeah, so so on circuit breaker, it's 261.6 million, which is 8.2 of an increase over what they actually did in 2015. The only other one I was going to talk about was just the Chapter 70. They spoke specifically about it in this particular memo, which statewide is supposed to guarantee an additional $25 per student. I know we talked about that a little bit last time. And then
even for districts that weren't going to see an increase to the floor, we're, however, one of those districts that's still increasing toward the new floor.
I think that's all I've got. Yeah, but you didn't.
I had heard something, and I can't remember from whom, but somebody on Beacon Hill, that there might be some movement on the circuit breaker transportation. Have you heard anything about that?
We have not. And I was with officers and MASS staff the other day. I've not heard that at all.
Okay.
I can check.
Yeah, no, I don't think it has come out. The question is whether or not there's something moving in that direction.
So the word is, I mean, the word early on was that we might get a local aid resolution. It's clear now, as we go to May 1st tomorrow, we're not going to get a local aid resolution. But I believe what we've heard is that one of the reasons that we're not is that everything's been so fast-tracked that they expect things to wrap up and the discussions to begin in terms of the joint committees. Of course, there's a whole discussion about joint committees, right? They expect those to get to those discussions very soon.
Any more questions? All right. Is there any new business? Seeing none, I'm sorry. All right. I did at the beginning.
Okay.
I already said something about Mr. Cox while you were apparently texting someone.
It's Jenna and I. We have this thing going.
You know. I wouldn't be surprised. All right, so we have an executive session. We're going to enter into an executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel and to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property because an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the school committee's negotiating position. We will take a roll call vote. Ms. Coyne.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right. After this, the school committee will not reconvene in open session. And so we are adjourned to executive session.